it's setting up enough of a structure that the plaintiff's lawyer can look at it and say, we're not going to get anything here. And so, I'm not going to do this on a contingency fee basis. If you want to pay me $500 an hour over the next 3 years, I'll be glad to take the case. But that leaves the plaintiff pretty much out of the picture. They're not going to sue if you put the barriers to winning high enough. And that is what gives you, that's why you want to have a great legal structure in the first place. Remember when we were all kids in elementary school, on the playground, they weren't picking on the big kid. They were picking on the little defenseless kid, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I want you to know, and I've got the t-shirt that says, "Ask me how I know." So we get everything out of our name. Now, how do you recommend we go about getting things out of our name?
Well, it's a process of designing an LLC or another type of entity, whether it's a trust or a limited partnership, very, very carefully. They have to be done because understand this, it's not just stamping out widgets. These cannot be cookie cutter types of entities that you're going to get online or from some, do it yourself service because it's way more complex than that. They try to make it sound really simple, push this button and you get an LLC, but it's
Yeah.
more complicated than that. There are 16 different kinds of LLCs. And if
Yep.
you don't know the difference between this versus that, how do you know you've got the right kind that'll actually work?
I listened to a seminar one time for a guy talking about how easy it was to set up a trust. And, for a couple $1,000s, he'd give you a piece of paper and that's your trust. That's your kind of your boilerplate document. What do you do with it after you have it done? Stick it in a drawer? I don't know. Maybe that's true, but that didn't seem very real to me.
Well, it's not very real. Now, a trust is a little bit different than a lot of the entities. If you're going to have a lawsuit protection entity, for instance, which would be a limited liability company or limited partnership, those have to be filed with the state. Those are state-created entities, and they are filed and they're registered with the typically
Okay.
Secretary of State. Trusts are a little different. They're in the sense of a will. They're not entities, and so think of this: when you create a will, you do put it in a drawer and leave it
Yeah.
there. Now, the trick is this: with a trust, it actually has to be funded. In other words, for it to be effective, you actually have to transfer assets into the name of the trust, and then it becomes effective. So, otherwise, a trust is really a contract. And unless you fund it, it is worthless. It's not worth the paper it's written on.
All right. So I'm still intrigued by the idea. That's why I keep going to seminars on trusts. But all right. So if I came, Bob, to your office and sat down, and let's say I had for the purposes of this call, an undisclosed number of properties scattered around the country
Mhm.
that, well, I, I can feel a little bit of boldness, I guess, because, I'm pretty well layered, but not as strong as I probably would like to be. But anyway, they're in LLCs. And I think someone would have a hard time finding the name of the LLC that is actually holding title to these properties. And um, but let's back up. Let's just say I'm somebody coming to you and I want to be in this business and I want to start. Maybe I've bought one rental property and I heard somewhere like tonight I shouldn't have that rental property in my name. When people come to me, I usually say, all right, your first line of defense is a good insurance policy. Your next
Mhm.
line of defense is go see an asset protection lawyer and get yourself set up right. Don't take any advice from me.
Mhm.
So we want to make sure we have insurance on the properties, but like for liability and that sort of thing. But when I come in to see you, what are you going to say? Or we're going to set up a thing, and my goal is to own a bunch of rental properties, and I want to flip properties over here and use that income to buy more rental properties and maybe buy an
Mhm.
apartment complex. I don't know what I might buy down the road, but that's about as well planned as a lot of people get. So
Oh yeah,
what are we going to do?
and that's a great offensive strategy. Remember, offense is making money; it's trying to score,
Yeah,
and a lot of people will do that. Start wholesaling or flipping to raise capital in order
right.
to buy rental properties, and that's a great approach. And I also agree with you that we ought to have insurance, of course. But remember, when you get that insurance policy, all those pages of fine print are not telling you what they will cover;
That's right.
they're telling you what they won't cover.
Ask me
And
how I know.
yes, yes, yes. So, there are plenty of exclusions. And because of that, in other words, your insurance policy is really kind of a little bit like Swiss cheese. It's got holes in it.
Yeah.
And you want to make sure that you have a backup plan. I used to represent the world's largest airline. And I learned that on a commercial airliner, they've got two systems for everything. The plane can fly on one engine, but what if that goes out? So they always have two at least. They can fly with one pilot, but what if the one pilot has a heart attack? They better have another one. So you want to always have a backup system, and that backup system is your legal structure, which protects you from
All right.
liability, come what may. But you know what? I also want to mention it's not just, I really think of lawsuit protection in terms of two different phases. And the first is keeping you out of a lawsuit.
Yeah.
It's setting up enough of a structure that the plaintiff's lawyer can look at it and say, we're not going to get anything here. And so, I'm not going to do this on a contingency fee basis. If you want to pay me $500 an hour over the next 3 years, I'll be glad to take the case. But that leaves the plaintiff pretty much out of the picture. They're not going to sue if you put the barriers to winning high enough. And that is what gives you, that's why you want to have a great legal structure in the first place. Remember when we were all kids in elementary school, on the playground, they weren't picking on the big kid. They were picking on the little defenseless kid, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So you don't want to be that little kid. You want to bulk up. Another way to say it is, if you're going to play the game, you get suited up for the game. You don't go on the football field
All right.
not wearing the helmet and the pads. So this is just part of getting suited up for the game.
So back to my question. I've come to
Yeah.
you. I'm sitting in your office.
Oh, yeah.
The attorney meter is running, and I want to know, what are we going to do to set up my flipping company and my rental properties? What do we need to do as the basic step one for asset protection here?
Well, we're going to understand what you're doing, first of all. And you just told me you're going to flip in one LLC, you're going to own rentals in another, and those are designed differently. Once again, there's 16 different kinds of LLCs. We're going to design one with a tax structure and an ownership structure different than we will from a rental property structure necessarily. So we're going to design it. We go through about 8 or 10 different steps. What state are we going to file this in? Who are the members going to be? How many members are there going to be? Are there supporting documents? How are we going to draft the operating agreement and this and that and the other things? And so before you build a house, you get a blueprint. You don't just go buy some hammers and nails. And the same thing is true. If you're going to set up an LLC, you plan it. You get a blueprint for that LLC. Most important step of all. So that's what we're going to do in the office. And then once we really know what we're doing, the implementation, the creation of the LLC is not that difficult. It's the planning stage that's the most important.
I'll tell you something, Bob, that you have no way of knowing about me, and most of the people on this call probably don't know this either. When I started in this business, a lot of people who know me know that I came into this business from the nonprofit world, having been 20 years in the ministry. And now I'm in this business for profit and doing real estate and flipping houses. And I went and sat down with a CPA one day, and he looked at me and said, "So, how do you want to structure it?" And I said, "I was kind of hoping you were going to tell me."
Well, yeah, that's his job, his or her job.
He's not my CPA, but now that was 20 years ago. But so if somebody comes into your office and they really have no idea, but they've been poking around on YouTube or somewhere on the internet, and they've got this idea, well, I need a Nevada corporation, I need a Wyoming corporation, or I need a Delaware corporation. Can you set that up for me? What are you going to say to that?
Well, the answer is yes, of course, we can set it up. But the question is that going to be a wise move? Is it necessary? First of all, we don't want to overstructure anybody. Every structure is going to cost some money, and there are minimal maintenance fees. So, there are plenty of structures where a two-tiered structure like that with maybe a Wyoming holding company would be appropriate. But not in every case. I mean, everything has to be customized to your particular business, which is why we sit down with you and we listen and understand what kind of real estate you're doing, where you're doing it, what state are you working in, or states. And then we can, once we understand that, we can identify the best way to set it up for you, give you
All
the
right.
best liability protection and lowest taxes.
Okay. Okay, but
Mhm.
now we're still going to pay taxes, state taxes, where in the states where we're earning income, right?
Yes,
We're not
yeah.
going to avoid that.
You know, one of the biggest scams out there is these radio ads that say incorporate in tax-free Nevada. Well, yeah, that works really well if you live in Nevada, but if you live in any other state with a state income tax, you're gonna. I don't care if you have a Nevada corporation or not, you're still going to pay state income taxes where you live.
Yes, and here's something that's some bad news for those of you that are in California. I just
Oh
found
yes,
out that even if your LLC is set up in a different state, California is going to charge you $900 a year to own a what they call a foreign corporation.
that's right. Exactly. You know, California's grab for money never ends, and
Yeah. So what we
you
say
know
to the
that's
people in that
exactly right.
situation in California is, welcome to Texas. Just don't
Yes,
vote the way you did in California.
that's right. That's right. There are actually billboards in Texas that say,
Yeah.
"Welcome, Californians. Leave your politics behind."
Yeah, I know. I've
Mhm.
seen those. But just having a little fun here. All right. Now, so I want you to know, and I've got the T-shirt that says "Ask me how I know."